I'm calling the meeting to order. Could we please call the roll?
Commissioner Cavell is absent with notice. Kowal?
Here.
McGilvray?
Here.
Powell?
Here.
Charles?
Present.
Long is absent with notice. Moss?
Here.
Markham?
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I need a motion for the approval of the minutes from June 23rd to June 30th. Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner McGilvray. Anybody have any comments, questions on the minutes? If not, do we do a voice vote? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Minutes are approved. Next up is a motion to approve the agenda for today. Commissioner Moss, supported by Commissioner Powell. Any comments? Do we want to add anything to the agenda? I would like to add an item under other business, which is the meeting time for this meeting, for the Finance Committee meeting going forward. Okay?
What?
Just to have that conversation that we were having before the meeting about do we want to have it at noon or 11? But it needs to be an agenda item we can vote on. So we're just going to do it under other business. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Why don't you just call it? Call it at 11. If you feel like you're the chair.
Can I do that? All right.
Yes.
If there's no objections, you're.
If there are objections, you're the chair.
Still learning, Chuck.
I know,
Still
that's
learning.
good. That was a good point. Thank you.
All right. Well, all right. So
Well, at least she was nice to consider us.
we won't add an agenda item. So let's go ahead and vote on approval of the agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Agenda's been approved. Do we have any public comment for this meeting? We have one. Would you come to the end down here and state your name for us? Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name's Catherine Kennedy. I'm here from Lake Orion. And I am actually very concerned about how things were handled on June 30th. On June 30th, there had been a Democratic caucus meeting scheduled for 5 p.m. that day. That day it was changed to 3:30. There was no Finance Committee scheduled that day, but an additional Finance Committee meeting was scheduled at 5:45 that day. At the same time, the full board had already been published for 6 p.m. At the Democratic caucus meeting, there was a confusion over the items. It seems that an assignment got converted to an appropriation or back and forth. Somehow, that day, everything changed from an assignment to an appropriation very suddenly and without any public notice and without any consideration for maybe what the citizens would like to have done with this huge amount of money that's being spent here. I am so concerned with the way the federal government has assigned how this money is to be spent to expand government, which does not create tax and revenues. It's a negative for our economy. We've got 25% of the business that we know of in Oakland County already that are closed, yet we're expanding spending foolishly, in my opinion. I really think it's very concerning how our society is turning into a welfare state, and people are being taught that they don't have the option and the opportunity to have freedom and the opportunity to make their own business or sustain it. I'm very concerned with how much welfare is being paid for people to stay home instead of giving them incentives and training to get a better job. It's very concerning. And the fact that we have adopted so many of the policies that are misguided and often misrepresented in the press and the facts, without facts. I'm very concerned about just the fiscal reality of the inflation that's being created by the government because of the wasteful spending, and by this board, we're increasing so much in long-term permanent costs like salaries and fringes. They're not going to go away when this boom of fiscal money dries up. We'll still have that cost. And to welcome, I know there's so much welcoming of the refugees and immigrants, and I'm all for legal immigration, but the way things are happening right now is very dangerous to our entire country. And I'm also concerned because there's a lot of spending of funds that I'm not sure are actually appropriate to be spent on non-citizens, like the HUD. The letter that I found that was not included specifically states all the HUD grant money is only allowed to be spent on citizens. So I'm very concerned that I've heard comments in other meetings that all these money are available to help the immigrants and refugees. And although I totally support legal immigration, I am very aware of how dangerous the current process is, in particular because I'm a bilingual and I've spent a lot of time and know a lot of people who live in those regions that are being brought up here. They are controlled by the cartels, very much so. And it's a very dangerous situation precedent we're setting by letting the criminals have priority over the law-abiding citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today and making your comments, Ms. Kennedy. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the committee in public comment? Seeing no one else, I will close public comment at this time and move on to communications. I need a motion to receive and file. Commissioner McGilvery, supported by Commissioner Charles. Are there any comments or questions on the communications? If not, please call the roll.
You can do a voice vote if you
Oh, we can do a voice vote. See, I still get confused about them. Is it because we're not spending any money that we can do a?
Well, it's because it's not an action that's going to the board.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, and I apologize for my naive
No.
state. Okay, so all in favor of accepting the communications, receiving and filing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Communications have been received and filed. With that, we will move on to the regular agenda. First item is the Sheriff's Office 2021 Snowmobile Law Enforcement Program Grant Application. Commissioner Moss,
Move it.
supported by Commissioner Powell.
Wow.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members.
Thank you.
Excuse me, of course, you know GAIA. We're applying for a grant of around a little over $70,000 from the DNR. We did have 4 snowmobiles in the fleet at the Marine Division, the Marine Unit. This will replace 2 older snowmobiles that we auctioned off last year if we're successful in the grant, plus buy some helmets and some patrol time. We're eligible for this grant because Pontiac Lake State Park has 84 miles of trails that are state trails. In addition to that, these could be used for rescues during the wintertime where we have maybe somebody lost in the snow when the snow's real deep, if we get a lot of snow or we get a little bit of snow, versus maybe using a quad runner if the snow's deep. So it'll be multi-purpose, again, if we're successful. This is just an application, and if anybody has any questions, happy to answer them.
Commissioner Colwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, just relative to the marine safety grants, how does this compare? Because they're talking, okay, so we have how many miles here? Like 83.4 miles of trails, and of course then 3,700 acres. But the funding that we get to cover, I don't know how many acres of lakes in Oakland County, I'm sure if you're considering.
Well, if we're successful on this grant on a
Yeah.
percentage basis, this would be a lot more than
That's what
we
I'm
get
saying.
for
It's like,
marine
what-
patrols on a percentage basis with the amount of lakes we have. But yes.
Can we leverage off of that?
Well, you know,
I know.
we don't even know we're going to be successful. If you don't ask, you don't
Okay.
get. So we're
All right.
competing against everybody
I just
else.
thought in comparison, this is a much, much higher
Yeah.
percentage of.
We are eligible, so we're applying. I'm not sure, but I believe It used to be in the past, these grants were only available north of M55, and I believe now the DNR, or through state legislature, I'm not sure how it occurred, anybody under M55 is now eligible, so.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner McGilvery.
Thank you, Madam. Question, we have our new ORV park out in Holly, and there will be snowmobiles out there, as I understand it, or that was the original plan. Will they be able to be used out there?
Good point, sir. That is correct. We'd be able to use them in the county parks, and that being a county park, we anticipate a large volume going in there. The parks has expanded. I mean, we do patrol that now. We have deputies assigned there, and that's a good point. Yes, sir. The answer to that question is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have a question? Commissioner Powell?
I just had a question. In regards to auctioning off the two, I just wanted to know, what did we kind of ballpark get from the two that we auctioned?
I'll have to get back to you. I'm not sure.
Okay.
They were really old. They were pull, not electric start, so
Oh, never mind.
not a whole lot.
I think they were from the 90s,
Yeah, I was just trying to see. No, so don't waste your
Okay.
time. We got enough.
It wasn't very much.
I was just asking. I just wanted to know. No, we're fine. Thank
just
you.
so we can
Anybody
document the
else have
proper
a question?
disposal, that's why.
Anybody else have a question?
Burial.
My only question would be, where do we keep these?
At, well, the rented facility we have over on Elizabeth Lake Road in
Okay.
Waterford, just west
Close
of
to the
Telegraph.
lake.
Well,
Closer to the
pretty much
lakes.
centrally located in the county.
Okay. All right. No other questions. Please call the roll.
On item number 1, Commissioners Kowal,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Moss,
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
And
Thank you very much.
We have
Oh, sorry.
6 yeas, 0 nays.
And 55, and now down here,
Yes, sir.
yeah, global cooling.
Thank you.
Where is 55?
155 is like.
It's right
Claire.
by Tawas. I have it
Oh.
kind of right up there.
Okay.
Goes to Cadillac,
Cadillac, yeah.
over at Carafe.
Okay, item number 2, Facilities Management and Water Resources Commissioner renewal lease with Danco Properties LLC for use of a building and storage yard. I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner McGilvray. Good morning, Mr. Zakos.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Good afternoon. Paul Zakos, Property Manager of Facilities. I'm joined with Amy Plouffe, the Chief Engineer of WRC. And this is a renewal of a lease, expires this year. And the water units for the WRC operates out of that location. WRC administration wanted to continue at that location, and we worked out an agreement with the landlord, Danco, to provide another 5-year lease. So I'd like the board to approve this lease, which goes for 5 years. Now, the lease is considered a gross lease, so the payments include CAM, taxes, insurance, snow, ice removal, and some other minor services and that kind of thing. So the synergy at that location is great because it's health service. WRC's one of the main customers, of course, is Farmington Hills, but the south end of the county has a lot of service needs for the water. So that location is great. This landlord is really good to work with, and they'd like to go another 5 years over there. So looking for you to approve this lease. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the commissioners for questions. Commissioner Kowal?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one quick question here. This is a last, be it further resolved, a budget amendment is not required as there is sufficient funding to cover the expenditure, but it doesn't, where is this sufficient funding? Where is it located?
Amy, do you know the funding?
Sure. Excuse me. Good morning. Good afternoon. Yeah, the lease would be funded through the water and sewer rates collected by the communities. So it's funded through water and sewer rates.
Okay, it just kind of jumped out at me. I don't know if that's been a standard way of doing these resolutions. I just missed it in the past, but I guess it would be appreciated if maybe the funds were identified that we're going to be covering this. Okay?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Kowal. Anyone else have any comments or questions?
Just a comment.
Commissioner Charles.
So as most of you know, this came through EDI this morning, and some of the questions that were posed were, very enlightening, just in terms of how many of these types of storage spaces that we have at the southern portion of the county, and then understanding that there were going to be no chemical problems with storage. So there's no storage of chemicals. This is just pipes, as we were told, and other types of things for water. So just wanted to share that too.
Thank you, Commissioner Charles. Anyone else? Seeing no one, let's call the roll.
On item number 2, Commissioners McGillivray,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Moss,
Yes.
Kowal,
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Next up, item number 3, the Circuit Court Family Division, Oakland County Child Care Fund Budget 2021 to 2022. Moved by Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner McGillivray. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is John Cooper-Eder. I'm the court's business manager. And I'm here today with several people. Ivana Maplanka, who's our director of our local MDHHS office. We also have Melissa Reed, who's the chief of our juvenile casework services. Heather Calcaterra, she is the manager of our Children's Village. It looks like Lori Strong is also here. I think she's with Children's Village as well. And Pam Monville, who is our deputy court administrator for the Circuit Court. We're here to seek your approval to submit the FY 2022 Child Care Fund budget to the state of Michigan. As you can infer by listening to the introductions, it's a very collaborative effort between the county executive offices, the Circuit Court, the Children's Village, and the state and local MDHHS offices. The Child Care Fund is a special funding arrangement between the county and the state. It was established by statute, and whereby child care costs are shared in a 50-50 arrangement. The funding is to support placement costs as well as programming costs for youth in both child protective proceeding cases as well as delinquency cases. All the costs are for youth that are under the Circuit Court's jurisdiction only. Up until last year, the county always paid 100% of the cost of care, and then the state would reimburse the county 50%. And then the state pays first legislation was enacted, and now for child protective proceeding cases only, the state pays 100% of those costs first, and then the county reimburses 50%. For delinquency, it's still the same. The county still pays the 100%, and then the state reimburses 50%. So it can be a little confusing, but we've got it under control. For purposes of the plan and budget, the costs are broken down into 3 categories. There's facility costs, which is basically our Children's Village. That represents about 80% of the budget. And then there's the out-of-home care placement costs in private institutions, which is about 10% of the budget. And then finally, there's the in-home care programs that represent about 10% of the budget as well. The in-home care programs are designed by the court and with the intent to keep the youth in their homes and in the communities rather than having to place them in the much more expensive out-of-home care settings. So bottom line for this year, FY 2022, the budget plan reflects gross expenditures of $31 million with the net expenditures of about $27 million. They both represent a decrease of about 2% from last year's budget submission. And all these expenditures are already baked into the county executive's recommended budget. They're just packaged a little bit differently for this submission to the state. Also, the plan reflects $2.27 million in neglect and abuse expenditures, which represents the county's 50% that I had talked about earlier. So we're just looking for your approval to submit this to the state, and all of us here are here to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Cooperrider.
You're welcome.
I'll open it up to the commission if you have any questions.
I almost need a study session.
Commissioner Charles.
Yeah, thank you for that high-level report. I wanted to dig into this part on page, it says 1 of the DHS packet for in-home care certification. And if you wouldn't mind just helping me understand number 5, where it says IHC funds shall not be used to meet the court staff to youth population ratio of 1 to 6,000. In the parameters of what's legal, can you share how many, in terms of, it doesn't have to be an exact, but a ballpark of how many youngsters are being serviced in a in-home care capacity?
Yeah, we typically have anywhere, well, in a typical year, I should say, back in maybe fiscal year 18 or 19, we would probably service close to 500 youth in our in-home care programs.
Okay, because I was really concerned at 1 to 6,000. Like, that's a one to many for sure. And that would seem to be where we would be overlooking youngsters. So 1 to 5, is it 1 to 500 in terms of?
Yeah, anywhere probably between 400 and 500, I would say.
Okay, and is that a good model? Should it be many to many versus 1 to many?
Well, we can only care, have all the services must be intensive services when we're using in-home care programs. So they have to be less than 1 to 20.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Charles. Anyone else? Seeing no other comments or questions, let's please call the roll.
Commissioners Powell,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Moss,
Yes.
Kowal,
Yes.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
I'm sure you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Have a great
Have a good day.
Thank you.
You too. Bye.
All right.
Chair, I just had one question
Yes, ma'am.
to you. With this
Commissioner
last
Powell.
thing we just voted on, so is it this budget that they're providing us that says it's 27 million? This is like the overall whole state? Or is this just us?
It's just us.
Lord jeez. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Next item of business is number 4, Friend of the Court fiscal year 2022 to fiscal year 2023 Cooperative Reimbursement Program, CRP, Grant Amendment. Moved by Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner McGillivray. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Suzanne Holliger. I'm the Friend of the Court Director, and I've brought with me here today Markeisha Washington, who's my counterpart in the prosecutor's office. She'll be coming with this same contract extension shortly, but I just thought since we do kind of share this same source of revenue that I would bring her along today to see what this is like. So this is just an extension of our contract that funds all of our child support operations in the county. We are just ending right now a 5-year contract, and this just extends the contract for 2 more years. the state has exercised both of its one-year options to extend the contract at the same time. So they're just extending our 5-year contract for another 2 years. So we'll continue providing the same services that we have been providing, and the state will continue to fund our operations at they fund about 66%, and we fund 34%. So I'm available if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Charles?
Yeah, and I apologize, I didn't ask this in the last report, but some of the wording suggests that it would be contingent on the state approving their budget. So again, I'm outside of my wheelhouse a little bit, but I guess my concern is, approving and basically attaching ourselves to something where we may not get the full amount budgeted. I know when they go through their budget, they decide to take things out and move things around. So do we have any precedents for that, just historically?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I've been in this role now for 18 years, and that's not happened. This is federal money. It's a pass-through by the state, so it's part of the big federal budget that's allocated to the states. It's actually uncapped, so as much as we feel that we need to spend, the state will match that 66% so that we can conduct our operations. So it's one of the, I think, 2 remaining uncapped entitlement programs in the federal budget. There is no history of them not being able to fund us. If for some reason we could not be funded, that would actually impact the whole child support operation for the whole county, right? Every single position in my office is funded through this grant process. So if something happened, it would be really a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Seeing no one, let's call the roll.
On item number 4, Commissioners Charles?
Yes.
Moss?
Yes.
Koa?
Yes.
McGillivray?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Markham?
Yes.
And I'm sure you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. See you later.
All right. Next up is item number 5, Information Technology Amendment number 2 to the agreement with the Oakland County Road Commission for a tower site at the Davisburg District. I need a motion. Commissioner Kowal, Commissioner Powell. Good afternoon, Mr. Tim.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Yes, this is part of our radio project. And this is an existing tower site, an existing lease that we have Road Commission property. And we're just looking to extend that lease with an amendment here for the new radio system that will be going in next year.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Commissioner McGillivray.
We have a cost on this, Mr. Tim?
I will double check. Typically, these leases are like for $1. If that's not listed in the lease, I will find out and get back to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Let's call the roll.
On item number 5, Commissioners Moss?
Yes.
Koa?
Yes.
McGillivray?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Charles?
Yes.
Markham?
Yes.
And I'm sure you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Charles.
are we able to get that definitive number prior to the 22nd?
Mr. Tim, can you provide that number to the commissioners before the board meeting?
Yes, I will. I should be able to get that today.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Moving on to item number 6, also Mr. Tim, Information Technology Comprehensive IT Services Interlocal Agreements. Need a motion? Commissioner Powell, supported by Commissioner Charles. Hello again.
Thank you, Commissioners. So these are part of our standard IT service agreements. We have a couple hundred of these. and they have a 5-year expiration. So we, at a minimum, confirm, one, that we are still providing the services, and two, that the entity wants to continue those services. So these are all renewals, and they are all with out-of-county organizations, non-county CVTs or entities. So in most cases, these are for Clemis services. And in some cases with Clemis, it includes the network connectivity for them. And you'll see also in the table, the summary table, there's a couple, Presque Isle County and what was the other, Coopersville, the city of Coopersville out near Grand Rapids. They have our online payment and over-the-counter payment services that they'd like to renew.
Okay. Commissioners? Commissioner Charles.
Hi, Mr. Tim. I just was interested in, do we capture any, I'm drawing a blank on the correct word, but any feedback from these communities, like middle of the contract, end of the contract, just to see what's, like a SWOT analysis almost, what's working, what could be improved?
So we do have folks for each of the services in the IT service agreement portfolio. We have separate, what you might call a customer relationship manager. In fact, for Clemis, we have a whole division of IT that supports Clemis, and there are several user support and customer support folks with Clemis. So we're interfacing with those customers very directly, very frequently. With other products, for example, the over-the-counter and online payments, those may have less frequent contact, and we may only get involved if there's changes in our service from our end, or if they have questions about the service. So there's not a specific SWOT analysis as you'd indicated or asked about, but it does vary with the product how much interaction they might have. Our GIS services and our data sharing services, those we interact with those cities, villages, and townships. We have user groups that meet on a bi-monthly, every 2-month basis. So some of them are very, very active, and some of the products are, you plug it in and it works, and there's not a lot of interaction. So it does vary by product.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, anybody else? Okay, seeing no one, please call the roll.
On item number 6, Commissioners Cowell,
Yes.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Moss,
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays.
Excellent.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Tim. And moving on to item number 7, the Board of Commissioners revised fund balance policy for the general fund. Today we have Sean Carlson and Kyle Jen to make a presentation to us. Welcome, gentlemen. I need a motion. Commissioner Charles, supported by Commissioner McGillivray. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee, for allowing us to present some information to you today. We're here to ask for a change in the fund balance policy, to strengthen the fund balance policy. I'm going to kick things off. We're here in the spirit of fiscal responsibility. And I'll take the first couple of slides, and then Kyle will do the heavy lifting here. So the first slide there, does everybody have it? And we'll go to the next screen, page 2 on the slide deck. Overarching goals. So let me just kind of touch base on a few things here. Number 1, we want to make sure that we're establishing an appropriate minimum fund balance level to protect the continuity of critical services to our county residents against economic and other risk without a need to increase revenues. I think that's Important to state. Also, number 2, more clearly delineate what portions of the fund balance are reserved for which purposes, rainy day versus strategic investments. Number 3, provide more specific guidelines. We all set?
I'm sorry, she wasn't moving with you. You moved ahead. I was
Okay.
trying to figure it out. I didn't know what button to push. Sorry, I was trying to sit. My bad, Sean. He just talking, I'm moving.
No worries.
I'm trying to stay in my lane here.
Well, you know we got people on there, so I was trying to move while he talking, but I didn't know how to hit, I didn't know what to hit.
Number 3, provide more specific guidelines for when the fund balance below minimum level can be used during an economic downturn or replenishing the fund balance. 4, ensure consistent annual review and evaluation of spending proposals by both county executive administration and the Board of Commissioners prior to the expenditure of taxpayer funds. And then number 5, which is important, is protect the county's financial position and our AAA bond rating. A little bit of background on this. The current fund balance policy was adopted in 2015. It formalized longstanding county policy of maintaining a general fund balance equal to at least 20% of the annual general fund, general purpose expenditures, which amounts to about 2 months. What we're looking at is something that will get us to 3 months, and Kyle will go into that in more detail. Also, FY 2020 ending fund balance was $267 million, equal to about 55% of the ongoing general fund, general purpose expenditures. So that's kind of the background of why we're here, and I'll turn the rest over to Kyle.
Is it possible to ask you a question on this slide?
Sure, go ahead.
So the term ongoing, the equal to about 55% of ongoing, why was that word added in there?
Ongoing.
Sure. This term ongoing fits in, with our goal to get to a structurally balanced budget where our ongoing base operational costs in terms of personnel costs, other related costs that are necessary for ongoing county services, are no greater than our ongoing revenues from property tax and other sources. So the concept is, if we have a one-time expenditure, that's not something that we have to continue, and therefore wouldn't be included in that calculation.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
If I may, ongoing versus one time.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Sean. It's good to be here. It's nice to finally see all of you in person after being on board for the last 6 months and lots of Zoom calls. So this next slide here is a snapshot. We tried to step back. It's been 5 years, or rather 6 years since the fund balance policy was adopted. We thought it was a good time to step back, do some additional analysis, and look at areas we could strengthen the policy. So we tried to take a global look at all of our major county general fund revenue sources, all of our expenditure categories, what are our risks that are out there, and what are our positives in terms of financial stability. So this table, I won't go through this line by line, but it gives you a sense of the things we looked at. Obviously, that second line there, property tax revenue, is our highest. So, that was part of our evaluation. Obviously, state revenue sharing is always a factor, although it's a relatively limited portion of our budget at this point. Charges for services are designed to be one-for-one in terms of the revenue paying for the service. And then we're obviously in great shape in terms of retirement costs and debt costs. So the next slide, gives you the history on property tax revenues. You can see steady, strong growth in the 90s and even through the recession of 2001. And then the major dip after the Great Recession. In terms of dollar magnitude, you can see from the peak to the lowest point, we lost about $66 million per year. Then you can see the growth, as we've bounced back over the last 10 years, and then the growth we're projecting out over the next 5 years. So on the next slide, here's the specifics on what we're proposing. We think it makes sense to increase the minimum fund balance level from 20% to 25%. As Sean noted, that would be equal to 3 months of operating revenue. So as opposed to the Government Finance Officers Association recommendation of 2 months, and that association recommends that you look at your own unique circumstances as you craft a policy. And we think, going a full month above the 2 months makes sense in Oakland County's situation. We also want to be clearer in the policy that we view those dollars up to the 25% as the county's rainy day fund. I think things, have gotten a little muddled in terms of what portion of the fund balance policy is rainy day fund and what portion is available for other things. We want to add a provision that adds a level of protection to say we're only going to access that rainy day fund, the amount below the 25% if we have a significant reduction in revenue equal to at least 5%. And absent that, we're going to leave the rainy day fund untouched. Above the 25%, which is really designed to deal with economic and revenue risk, we think it makes sense. We know there are other risks out there. For example, a natural disaster that could hit and have an impact on county facilities and operations. So we think it makes sense to add another 5% there for non-economic risks and get us to a target level of 30%. Any amount then above the 30%, there are some provisions in the current fund balance policy around one-time investments out of fund balance. We want to strengthen those provisions, make it absolutely clear that any investments out of fund balance should be one-time in nature. They should be strategic in terms of the county's mission and priorities. And we think those things should run through the annual budget process rather than happening through a year-end fund balance assignment. And then finally, there's currently a requirement that if the fund balance does drop below the minimum level during an economic downturn, that we adopt a plan to get it back up to that level within 5 years, which we think makes absolute sense to continue. The next slide, kind of provides a visualization on what I just said that hopefully, makes it a little clearer. We're using some round numbers here just to make the math a little easier, but these are, these are the approximate magnitudes. If we assume a projected fund balance of $250 million, our current ongoing general fund expenditures are about $480 million. So that 25% amount for the rainy day fund would be about $120 million that we would hold to be used only in the case of a downturn in the economy and revenues. The 5% for other risks would be about $24 million. So that would get us to a target level over the long term of $144 million. So the amount above that would then be available for one-time strategic investments. Based on the numbers here, that's about $100 million. The one thing I would flag here, that we've talked about previously and we're still waiting for a decision on is the Raffaelli case related to, foreclosures and the excess value of those houses. We're still waiting for a decision from the court on that. There are other cases moving for other counties in parallel that we think are complicating things a little bit, but there is a distinct possibility in the near future, that we could incur in additional liability of $30 million above the $10 million that's already been booked. So that would lower the amount in that third box. There is a current fund balance assignment for that $30 million. But I just want to be clear about that we're watching that closely, and certainly we'll make sure we are prepared to deal with that if the decision is not in our favor.
Commissioner Powell.
So just with that, so that'll combine 40 million, it could be up to 40 million, and we have to be responsible for? Is that what you're letting them know?
Correct. If
Okay.
the decision is that the previous decision applies retroactively, the estimated, the estimated liability for the county is about $40 million. We had already booked a liability of $10 million with the fiscal year 20 budget, so that would be an increase of $30 million.
Got it, okay, thank you.
All right, moving on to the next slide. We took a look at the priority areas for one-time strategic investments. I won't read these in detail, but you can see they're consistent with, I think, the goals that have been established by the administration and the board for the county. A couple of concrete examples that are on our radar up front. One would be we're in the process of having an outside consultant evaluate the county campus and facilities, and take a look at an opportunity to potentially consolidate facilities, reduce footprint, reduce energy costs. So that would be an example of something where there would be a one-time upfront cost, with a return on investment for county operations and financial savings from reduced energy usage and so forth. So that really fits the first bullet and the third bullet around energy sustainability. And then secondly, on the technology side, we know there are technology needs out there. Kind of at the top of our radar in terms of potential cost is that the circuit court, has a pretty archaic case management system that's due to be replaced, and you'll hear more about that next week with the budget presentation, that we want to move forward with an RFP process and look at what the costs are there. So those are a couple of the concrete examples. I would emphasize a couple things. Any one-time investments that would be funded out of fund balance, the administration would insist have documented long-term return on investment. Those would be brought to the board once the administration has vetted them for review and approval on your end. We want to do this through the regular budget process. I would just emphasize that point again. And then secondly, this is not something we'd be looking at spending down fund balance overnight. It makes sense to do this in a staggered long-term basis to make sure each project is cost effective and implemented in the most effective manner. And that's actually explicitly spelled out in the policy. Last chart here, this is a history on our general fund balance. You can see how it's grown, as we came out of the Great Recession, and has bounced around that $250 million figure. The green line there reflects our updated 5-year plan that we'll talk about more next week with the budget, to stabilize the fund balance at that $250 million figure as we drive towards structural balance to account for the cost of the compensation plan that was implemented, and other spending factors. So this reflects stabilizing prior to any one-time investments, does not account for Raffaelli at this point. So again, I would just flag that, which is listed in the notes at right, and then you can see those three flat lines are roughly flat because they would grow with the size of the budget. Show what the current policy says for the 20% minimum, the increase we would make to the 25%, and then the 30% target above that. So that's that roughly $150 million that would be our target to maintain over the long term. So with that, that concludes our presentation. Certainly happy to answer any questions.
I need a motion to receive and file their presentation. Commissioner Powell, Commissioner Kowal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So we'll receive and file. And I will open it up to any questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this presentation. I think it's very encouraging that we're creating a little bit more of I guess, of a margin there for whatever might be coming down the road, so I think it's great. Just a couple questions, I guess. How, I guess the first one would be, how did you arrive at the decision for 3 months versus 4 months of expenditures? How did you land on that number? And also, I guess another thing I might ask is, you say that if for whatever reason we have to dip below that within 5 years, you'd have a plan to get back up within 5 years. And since we're running expenditures closer to revenues, I guess which makes it, I think, a lot more difficult to build that back up. So what would be your, any ideas on what your plan might be to build that back up? And then I think that's my 2 main questions. I have a couple other, just on your priority areas, I might add where you say improving the health of the community. I might add safety to that as well. So just how did you end up at that number, and then what exactly would you do to bring it back up within 5 years if we have to dip below that?
Sure. I can, I can take a crack at those questions, and Sean can certainly add in perspective. I mean, I think, really there's 3 factors in my mind that make 3 months make sense. One is that, it's a full month above the recommendation from GFOA. 2 is if you look at the rating agency criteria, and perhaps we should have added a slide on this, but Moody's actually establishes 30% as the marker for a AAA rated county. S&P is actually only at 15%, so we would be twice their level. So that's factor 2, and then factor 3 is just looking at the historical experience. With the Great Recession, we lost about $60 million per year. So the level of 120 million would be twice that, and I think would provide us a good cushion to be able to deal with even an extreme circumstance like that. Second question on building it back up, I think that's a great question. I think in the case of a downturn, we recognize, that the purpose of a rainy day fund is so that you don't have to immediately reduce expenditures or increase revenues. But the reality is, over time, you probably would make some adjustments to your expenditures, to scale things back in that kind of a situation. And then I think as you grow out of that, if your expenditures are starting from a lower base, and then as the economy recovers and you get some revenue growth, that creates some surplus to be able to help build the rainy day fund back up. And then on the third points on safety, we do have, I would note on the second bullet, we do include enhancing public safety preparedness and campus security and emergency response. On slide 8.
Okay, good, thank you.
And the only thing I would add is to echo what Kyle said on the rating agencies was a key factor. But the other reason for this policy change, I think, was a big thing, is to make sure that we were clearly delineating rainy day fund versus strategic investments, where before everything was in one pot. And I think making sure, although we had those percentages there, making sure that we had a clear understanding around that was one of the motivations behind this policy as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kowal. Commissioner Charles?
Great. 2-3 months ago, I wondered if we had a fund balance policy, and I was assured we do, and I appreciate this changing of it to better suit our rating and all those kind of things. And I guess where I was slightly looking for just some additional insight, so we have this, I'm on slide 7, and we have the green box at the top, total fund balance, because, my detriment or my blessing is that I was on the school board for 9 years, and I just want to better understand there's the trigger that the state sets up. The rainy day fund, our true general fund minimum balance is 25%. Well, would be with this proposal. So I guess I'm not understanding what the rainy day portion of that is. Is it just the terminology you're choosing to use? Right now, I'm thinking the fund balance is still 20%, and then we have a 5% rainy day. So I'm definitely absorbing this differently than what I'm supposed to. So if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now it's a little bit muddled. We have assignments of fund balance that happen at the end of the year, and some of those assignments kind of fit in a rainy day bucket, but it's also part of the overall mix, so I think our goal is to make it clearer every year with our fund balance that all of the dollars in the fund balance fit into one of these boxes, and there's no overlap between the two, so everything up to that 25% would be clearly rainy day fund, would only be accessed if there were a 5% reduction in revenues, and obviously the board and the administration decided that the use of the rainy day fund was appropriate to deal with that as opposed to other measures. So I don't know if that helps at all.
It does. And I know you're still ironing things out, so I'll hold on tight. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Charles. Anybody else? Commissioner Moss?
Yes, thank you. There's a lot of good stuff in this, a lot of stuff to like, and excuse me, since we're just voting to receive the file, not on the merits, so we're just accepting it. And I got a lot of stuff. I like the overall idea of, I want to say sort of regularizing or institutionalizing the management of it rather than just kind of keeping it kind of loose. First of all, I guess this piggybacks with Eileen. Excuse me, Commissioner Kowal. 5 years. Is 5 years too long? 5 years seems that we're going to, after it's spent down to replenish in 5 years. Is 5 years? It seems a little long.
Well, I mean, I think in the event of an economic downturn, in the event of use of rainy day fund, the board and the administration would certainly have the option to look at something faster. I mean, I think historically, recessions happen on average, every 6 or 7 years, so 5 years makes sense from that perspective. But I certainly think there would have to be an evaluation in the case of an economic downturn, do we want to accelerate that?
Sure. By the way, I appreciate that you come here in the spirit of fiscal responsibility. I was supposed to say spirit of Christmas or fiscal responsibility pastor.
And friendship.
And friendship. Amity and friendship without a doubt. Okay, so when I'm looking at this, tell me I'm wrong, and you never had any problem with that before, is that the rainy day fund, you're separating this out into basically two categories, one being the rainy day fund, which is 25%, and the other is the other risks or national disasters or whatever, which is 5%, correct? That's
correct.
A total of 30.
Yep.
All right. So put that together, and you got about 144 million, which is the ballpark.
Yep.
Okay. Currently, we got 267 million in there, which gives us a 100 million to basically play with or to deal with according to this plan, right?
Correct.
Correct.
I wouldn't use the term
sorry,
play with.
I wouldn't either. Let's be careful about terminology.
Gee, now I have to, now I'm like talking for the record here. I got to watch myself.
You better watch yourself.
Yeah, whatever I said before, believe me, it was all appropriate. Okay, so.
Let me also point out.
Yes.
I'm not sure there would be 100 million, first of all, not to play with, but there are some assignments that are in there right now that, that we would categorize under strategic investments.
Yes. Can you give me a couple of quick, I think I know what they are. Why don't you give me a couple of quick?
Well, I think
the largest ones are around IT.
Yeah.
Infrastructure and some things that have to be replaced in the next few years where there were fund balance assignments made.
The court record system.
We'll need to follow through on that.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, according to and once again, the big picture, because as once again we all know, I'm not great on details, but that's okay. The devil's in the details, which is why I stay away from them. What is
You basically, I would say we've got a lot of fund balance, and we're going to spend it down. I believe someone actually used the term spending down fund balance. Why do you want to do that?
I think, I don't know if we would spend down the fund balance. We need to make strategic investments along the way in our economy, different projects that might happen from an economic development perspective, our footprint, potentially on the campus too, capital infrastructure. So to say spend down, I don't know. From that perspective, we have criteria for one-time spending, and we need to adhere to that criteria, and those are the guideposts.
Yeah, because it's one thing, I'm obviously not an accountant, and I don't even play one on TV. I play other things on TV, economists mainly. But the thing is that it's just really weird, but I sort of, if you sit down and kind of autodidact yourself onto financial accounting, you find that there's a concept called owner's equity, which is, or in the corporation, shareholders' equity. And if you port that over to government, we basically got citizens' equity. We have money here, we have wealth, if you will, that belongs to the people and has been saved over the years through various means. I don't want to have Bob Dado come and yell at me. So the thing is that you've got this shareholders' equity, if you will, or citizens' equity. Is this the best use for it? You've got, like I said, almost 100 mil, and as someone who was in the county before, is that was very useful, that equity, if you will. You used it to bootstrap other things. It certainly was a foundation of our AAA bond rating, because you could say, look, everybody else has got no equity. What was it, one year once we were up at the state, and I think they had enough fund balance, a rainy day fund, to run the state for 20 minutes.
Half hour.
Half hour?
Yeah.
No, that was generous too, by the way. Yeah, we remember. Yeah, see. So and now here we have quite a bit. I don't know how comfortable I am with the idea of taking it down for whatever reason. Now I understand you're talking about strategic investments. And I'm looking at them, and some of them, of course, are completely. I think they're exemplary. Others of them I got to worry about. And are they all? Although you say documented long term, does that mean that's objective? Quantifiable? Improving the health of the community. Are you going to say, gee, by in 5 years we're going to have X percentage of various measures? I got to go back. My father was a marketing guy. He was marketing with Dow Chemical. No, he was not in the consumer marketing. Although I could tell you some stories how some of those products got named. I know the guy that Scrubby Bubbles is actually named after? No, really, seriously, I'll get that some other time. But the thing is that one thing my dad did was this back in the 60s, when we were growing up, we're all watching TV, is he said, pay attention to the commercials. Don't just blow them off. Who is selling what? Who are they being pitched to? What is being sold? So we would actually grow up analyzing them. And one thing he said is, how often do they say invest in something when it's really just consumption? Like invest in a new watch, invest in a vacation, invest in a new car. By the way, in the 60s, commercials, the best ones were the cigarette commercials. They were awesome. Cars were second, but the cigarette, they were great. Too bad they had to ban them all, and it was right to do it, but still. So the deal is that I'm looking at if you can sell consumption as investment, you can sell almost anything, quoting my dad. So, and he didn't approve of it. So I'm looking at a lot of these things. Are we going to have ROIs? Are we going to say, gee, improving the health of the community? That's a good thing to do. Workforce development, that's another good thing to do. But I look at this in some ways, you can say these could be anything. These could be, really non-objective, non-quantifiable. And I'm not real comfortable myself with spending down our citizens' equity, which is what it is, for stuff that unless you can say we're going to be green, that's great. Green can be great. We're spending, let's take $1 million to heat this building. We're going to take that down to $500,000. That is without a doubt a fine investment, and I'm all in favor of that. But if we're going to just send out checks to people, I don't know about that. Where's the ROI to that? So this is an issue for me, and like I said, I will be very happy to hear the response. Thank you.
If I could jump in on the first part, and maybe Sean wants to address the second part. I mean, I think the perspective on sort of citizen or taxpayer equity is a good one. So I think our goal, in terms of looking at the fund balance, these are all dollars that have been paid by taxpayers, in the county over the last decade or 2 decades. So our goal was really, as we're managing those dollars, what's the right level to hold as a rainy day fund to ensure that during an economic downturn, we don't have to immediately reduce the level of county services for those taxpayers. But then, the amount above that, what's the appropriate use of those taxpayer dollars for things that do have long-term benefits for county operations, for county services out to those residents. And that's certainly a process we want to be careful and measured about, but we also don't want to just hold those dollars if there are good uses that the county executive administration and board identifies, to improve operations and services.
Well, why not, for instance, an investment portfolio? I mean, you could invest and get a return. I mean, I understand now you're in a different line of work than the county. I understand that, but is this a rush to spend the money we got left by Rich Uncle Brooks? I mean, that's
yeah. So let me jump in here. It is not a rush to spend down. So I don't want that term to be misused.
Well,
I mean, if we go back on slide 9, you can see the 5-year fiscal plan, which is also part of your budget books as well. There is no rush to spend down any fund balance. You can see where it's projected in 5 years. So I don't want that to be misrepresented on the spend down. The question becomes is when there's an investment, and one person's investment might be another person's consumption. It depends where they're at. But this board will have to decide what the ROIs are from the respective elected offices as they come and present their proposals. But we've laid out a set of criteria here, and we intend to look at what the return on investment is from our perspective. Now, there are other policy questions. Some people might have one viewpoint versus another on, hey, this seems like this is a spend down of citizens' equity. Others might say, hey, this is an investment to increase the citizens' equity. When we look at economic development from a perspective, I think we need to continue to look at the future. Where are we at with our manufacturing base? Things are shifting. The economy is shifting. We need to make sure that we're making investments and not falling behind. Sitting on dollars here in the county, and I'm just using economic development from that perspective, we need to try to skate to where the puck's going to be, not to where it's at. We need to make sure that we are lining up this workforce that we have in Oakland County, that we continue to have great foreign direct investment. We're 3rd in the country in regards to foreign direct investment. Yeah. We need to continue to attract businesses here, be a place that corporations want to come. We need to support our manufacturing base with Industry 4.0 and turn the page and make some investments there as well. So some people might say, hey, that's a spending down of the citizens' equity, but I would say that is an example of trying to make sure that we're making investments to continue to have a strong economy here in Oakland County and lead the way. Now, this board will debate the merits as different proposals come in front of you throughout the year. It is our hope that when we're looking at proposals for one-time spend, that they occur during the budget process. Now, that's not always, you all know that's not always the case.
Now, that's one of the things I really like, by the way.
Yeah.
That's one of the things.
So we would like to try to push things into the budget process of if someone's going to make an investment argument, then we make that during the budget process. Now, that's our goal, but we know sometimes things might happen where that might be not take place. But anyways, that's what I would say to the strategic investment. I appreciate, I appreciate your statement on citizens' equity. But I would say that if you look at the 5-year fiscal plan that we put forward, it's not a race to spend down that strategic investment. We want to continue to have a strong fund balance.
Well, I appreciate your compliment. Your predecessor, Mr. Dadham, never said anything nice to me sitting up there, that's for sure. And it's good. And he still wouldn't. All right, I have a question, by the way, now to Madam Chair. The vote we did was to receive and was not just to receive and file, but to recommend to the board that we pass this.
No, we voted to receive and file.
Okay, super. All right, thank you. Just an editorial comment. I would hope that the money that we have, the equity, which is it's a great term. I made it up, so I love it. The deal is that objective, quantifiable, nothing subjective. Things that you can say you're taking this money and you're going to get X back by Y. All right. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Moss. Commissioner Kowal, you had another question.
Well, yeah, I just kind of wanted to add on to what Commissioner Moss was saying.
It's always Chuck to you. Chuck to everyone.
Yes, I guess that there was a plan with the previous administration also to get to a structurally balanced budget. So it was just, they had it, but it was going to be using ongoing expenses to a certain degree to spend that down until we got to a structurally balanced budget. That's my understanding. And I think that the current administration just has a different viewpoint in that you feel that the fund balance shouldn't be used for ongoing expenditures. I mean, it's kind of the same, we're getting kind of the same area, just kind of a different way.
Yeah,
Am I correct? Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to eliminate the planned use of fund balance. Revenues need to equal expenditures.
Right.
And
so if you, no matter how it was done, if we kept going on the previous trajectory, then that fund balance would have gotten a lot less over time, correct?
The last 5-year plan under the previous administration showed an elimination of planned use of fund balance by 2024, 2025.
Right.
We, I think, might use fund balance this year, and then we should be in the positive by next year. Is that right?
Correct.
So what fund balance then, where would they have ended up with the percentage of fund balance under that plan? I forget.
I was
same.
I think it was $97 million.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. So that would be,
A lot less than what we're projecting.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kowal. Commissioner Charles.
Yeah, so does this account for sometimes it's considered under GAAP or the GAAP, but it's some kind of unfunded liability that municipalities carry because of, benefits to staff and things like that, that fast forward into the future, but, So I was just wondering, does this account for that? And if you need that accurate title, I can Google it real quick.
Sure. So, I mean, I think you're talking about unfunded liabilities in retirement systems.
Correct.
So the county does not have any unfunded liabilities in retirement systems. Both our pension system and our healthcare system are funded above 100%. So, that's certainly something we keep an eye on, particularly on the pension side, because we're just above 100%, but it's not a factor here.
Great, thank you.
Great question.
Commissioner Powell.
Chuck, you was over there. Was that something you did back in the day? Were you a part of that?
Yes,
Okay,
actually.
great. I just
Here in
wanted to-
Lansing. So was Eileen.
Okay.
Yes, we were.
Wow.
Proud to be part of it.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any comments or questions?
So,
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, you weren't voting on this, just receiving and file? You're
No,
going to
we
vote
are
it
going
at-
to vote on it, but we had to receive and file the
Gotcha.
report too.
Gotcha. Thank you.
If I could,
Two votes?
if I could
We're
clarify
gonna make
one
2
comment
votes.
I made earlier, just in the full interest of transparency, because I got a note from Corporation Counsel on Raffaelli. The true worst case scenario on that is an additional $40 million. We think the likely cost, if there's a decision that's retroactive, is $30 million. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
But 10 has been set aside.
And 10, right, so that would be above the 10.
Yeah, gotcha.
So-
And certainly Corporation Counsel can provide a better briefing on this if you're interested in it, but.
Okay. Commissioner Powell?
So because you said that, is that a total of 80 million we may be up to
No.
paying them? Oh, still the 40?
Total of 50 would be the worst case scenario.
Goodness gracious, okay.
And again, this is unfortunately something, caused by state statute, not being consistent with the state constitution, not anything Oakland County did, but obviously we're on the hook for the dollars.
And I understand the other counties have the same situation
Yes.
if they have a, yeah. Commissioner Powell?
Can you
still have the floor.
restate that statement, please? What you just said? Who was responsible for this? Please, can you clear
This is getting
that?
awfully dangerous since I'm not a lawyer, but the case is a function of state statute being found to be incompatible with the state constitution, not any specific action by Oakland County. And as the chair points out, this is an issue for all counties across the state.
Thank you so much, and that's just for our constituents to know on behalf of us as commissioners as well. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, nothing to do with that.
I'll just add my 2 cents. Ever since I came to the Finance Committee, I have had difficulty with what happens at the end of the year, the assigning of fund balance up and down and around to make everything make sense. And I had a really difficult time following that, especially my first year on the Finance Committee. I understand it a lot better now, but I really like what we're doing with this because I think it elevates the issues in a transparent way at the appropriate time for spending that, what are we calling it? Page, the third one. The strategic investment plan. My understanding and my expectation would be that, say you want to buy a $20 million widget because it's going to, fix all the cars in the fleet and save us all this whatever. I would expect you would come to me with, or to this committee with the expense, the justification, how it's going to be paid for, and how long it's going to take to replenish the funds in the fund balance or whatever. It's my expectation that every expenditure that way will come with that kind of information attached to it. And to me, that will be more clear of a process than what we've had in the past. So I appreciate that change, especially to all of this. I also like the fact that we're increasing our rainy day fund to 30% to help us maintain our AAA bond rating. And we just know it's there, and I think our citizens will be happy to know that our rainy day fund is solid. And I'd just like to touch on the last point that Commissioner Kowal was addressing, which is our retirement costs. We are so fortunate that previous administrations and boards put us in a position where we have the funding for our retirement systems, and we're not looming out there like many of the other municipalities still are, with a lot of difficulty in how they're going to pay for all of that. So I feel fortunate that we have a good plan, we have a good budget, and we have, I think, a good strategy going forward for how to talk to each other. What does the administration want to do? What does the board think is important? And so on. Communication to me is the very most important part of spending our money wisely. So I appreciate this, and if nobody has any other questions, then we will have a roll call vote on the resolution to go before the board. Commissioner Moss.
I assume we're going to have a motion and a second, and when we do that, I have a quick comment.
Okay.
We do have a motion and second.
Oh, we do have,
The
okay.
beginning, yeah, for number 6.
To approve.
For the
Correct.
resolution.
Okay, not to receive and file, but to approve.
To approve, right.
Okay, and that motion is on the table right
Yes.
now. To address that motion, since we are moving to approve and essentially to recommend this particular plan to the board, I am going to pass on this. That does not mean I'm against it. I'm not quite ready to say, gee, I think it's a great idea, we should do this. And that doesn't mean I can't be can't be brought aboard, but at the moment I'm kind of going to be that, so I'm going to be passing. But I'm not going to be voting no. So there you go.
Okay, thank you.
Is that allowed?
Is it allowed? That's a good question.
You have to.
I don't think you can pass.
I can't pass. Oh, it's not Lansing.
You
Huh?
can do that in Lansing.
Okay, then I can. Then I'll be voting no, and I'm going to be put in it that way.
Okay, and a no vote would
Come back to you. but-
would bring this to
You're
the
not
full
in
board
Kansas
for
anymore,
discussion.
Dorothy.
So it won't
Okay,
go
now
under
wait a
the
minute. So
consent
let me
agenda, it would
understand
just-
so that I don't, so that we don't, I don't want to cause, blow it all up. So in other words, if I vote no, then this doesn't go to the board, it whatever.
It will go to the board. It will go under regular agenda, not the consent agenda.
Okay, so to do this, if I vote no, it goes to the regular agenda, not consent.
Correct.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, all right. It can go off the consent agenda. I just think it should be explained to the board
Can't
anyway.
believe I actually taught you something. That's good.
What do you mean? I learn all the time. I learned how to actually be serious.
Okay. We've sort of lost decorum here in terms of who's who. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Commissioner Kowal? I thought you raised your hand. Okay, everybody good?
Yes.
Please call the roll.
On item number 7, Commissioners McGillivray,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Moss,
No.
Cowell,
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 5 yeas and 1 nay.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And I have 2 points to make before we adjourn. Mr. Tim sent me a text back on the subject of...
Chair, we're closed out with them too.
Yeah, you guys are
They
done.
were slowly creeping from the table.
Yeah, they're done.
Get them there clear. They didn't know if they had to go or.
Not under the table. Thank you.
They were looking like, what do we do?
Slinking away.
Thank you, gentlemen. We will see you at the board meeting. All right. Okay, so Mike Tim answered me back that the radio tower lease is in fact a $1 lease. And he sent the original lease agreement to the staff. So we would have a copy of it. And secondly, I will reiterate that going forward, the Finance Committee will now meet at 11 o'clock instead of 12 o'clock, like we had changed.
So all meetings moving forward is at 11.
Right.
But I have one question for you. You put out our, I don't know if it's final or tentative for our budgeting meetings. And I appreciate it because you put them on our meeting day. Thank you. That kind of keeps us all on one day.
That was the point.
Potentially, so, oh, that's why we kind of moving up an hour and then we flow into those for the next few months, right?
Right.
Okay, great.
What we set it at noon while we were in the pandemic virtual meeting situation, saying when we came back, if it worked to move it back to 11 o'clock, we would do that. And since economic growth doesn't seem to have huge agendas right now, this works to meet at 11. And that way, we don't conflict with Parks, who has a meeting in the later afternoon, and so it fits better, I think, for other people to be here at 11.
Got
We
it.
used to be at 9.
Commissioner
At one point, this committee met at 9.
Yeah.
Why not 9?
Because economic growth meets at 9:30. And we throw the TIF committee meeting and the coordinated zoning meetings before economic growth if we have one of those. And they usually meet at 8:30 or 9 on this day. So we do have meetings from 8:30 till the end of this one. So if no one objects, we're going to move them up to 11 o'clock. And Michael talked to the...
You want me to give a brief overview of what was sent out?
Sure.
Okay, so the budget hearing schedule did get published or distributed within the last 24 hours. What you did see on that was that, yes, they did follow right immediately after the Finance Committee meetings. In addition, I believe there's 2 dates where you will have budget hearings right before the full board meeting. So it's good to recognize that as well. We need, in order to not have long marathon days where you come in here at 11 o'clock and you stay until 5 to cover all the different departments. We decided to break it up and put some additional dates on there prior to the board meeting. So those will begin at 3 o'clock. And I believe it's 2 days. I think it's the 5th and the 18th or 19th, one of those days that we have in August. So after that, I do believe Mr. Jen has provided some government budgeting 101 orientation, kind of instructional seminar, I would call it, to any of those commissioners that do want to attend. Even if you haven't responded to Patty to say that I do, feel free. I think we will try to get that out to all the commissioners that want to just be informed on it anyway. And that begins, I think, tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So it's on the 15th at 3 p.m. We will be sending out a YouTube GoToMeeting link as well in case you wanted to attend remotely. But that's the update with budget hearings. And on the 28th, we'll begin at 12 o'clock with a budget overview from the county executive's office, and then go right into HR and some other departments as well. So that's where we're at, and just to keep you guys informed as well.
And I would like to thank Mr. Andrews for organizing all of those budget hearings. He also created some leading questions for the departments so that they will come prepared to answer the kinds of things we're looking for. But feel free to formulate your own questions. Each group will be with us for 20 minutes to a half hour. And hopefully it'll all go smoothly. But this gives us an opportunity to really talk to every department in the county about how they're spending our money, and I think that's our job as this committee. So thanks, everybody. And Commissioner Charles, you had a...
Yeah, for the last part on the agenda about business and adjournment stuff, is it finance or would it be government or other committee? Because yesterday we had the investiture with the judges, and they were in the beautiful boardroom there, and they were all sitting on those worn out, raggedy looking little red chairs. And I was wondering, on the record, how can we fix that so that when we do have judges or guests or even us, that the seats don't look so worn and terrible. So I wonder what committee would that go through?
Well, that's a facilities issue.
That's econ.
And economic development.
Great, great to know.
And I want to talk about having an accessible bathroom in this building when we make any adjustments to this building again. I was very disappointed that wasn't included as part of the stuff that happened over. Nobody in a wheelchair can go to the bathroom in this building. They have to go out and down into the main 1200 building. And in 2021, I think that's something we should fix. But anyway.
I'll pass that along to the chair.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else have anything before the Finance Committee today? If not, I will call us adjourned at 1:29. Thanks, everybody.
All right, it was a noon to 1:30 meeting.
Yes.
Good.